I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. Week to week, this podcast covers a variety of stories and topics, both of a personal nature and of shared public interest.
Season 4, Chapter 2.
This just in. Let's talk news. This just in. Let's talk news. What's new? What's the latest? Did you hear the news? Breaking news. Is that all the news? Sounds like fake news. The news is next. But first, this word. Yeah, just before I get to talking about the news, I want to acknowledge this relevant fact. Something that is celebrating 100 years of existence in 2022. Turning 100 in 2022 is the radio commercial. In 1922, on WEAF in New York City, the very first radio commercial went to air. It was for a realty company. It cost them $100, and it went on for about 10 minutes. That very first radio commercial that went on the air 100 years ago changed media forever and compromised everything we see and hear on media from that moment to this very day. This is important to understand. News is sold, bought, and paid for like everything else. How could it not? We live in a system of commerce. Your spending is someone else's income. Nothing outside of nature itself can exist on this planet without being funded. And even nature is mined by humans to further fund our lives. From the airing of that very first radio commercial, our media, including news and information, became a commodity, like everything else. The gathering and dissemination of news and information is also a very expensive venture, especially if you care about gathering and disseminating accurate information. In order to be profitable, news and information has followed the path of many other industries. It has seen the slow takeover by large corporations. It's harder to find local news these days. In the same way that where your local diner used to be, now stands a McDonald's. The mom and pop store is now a Dollarama. And all those other neighborhood businesses are shuttered because they could not compete with the Walmart down the street. The eradication of small businesses. It has a negative effect on neighborhoods. Less community. Less unique identity. Much more of what the U.S. calls generica. Ever heard this? This is where, for example, they could blindfold you, take you anywhere in the country, drop you off and take the blindfold away. You'd have to guess where you are based on your surroundings. Well, there's a PetSmart and an Applebee's and a 7-Eleven. Yeah, could be any one of 1,000 towns. Nothing particularly unique. Nothing local. In the exact same way, the elimination of local news by corporate takeovers for the sake of profits means that when it comes to news and information, you don't know where you are. Studies have shown that when a community loses its local news, it becomes more reliant on national services, which, by design for profitability, are more politicized. People become more polarized, and polarization leads to the end of democracy. Am I overstating? I don't think so. Let's go back to Walmart. I'll continue to pick on them for a bit in my analogy. Walmart can't be bothered to understand that the ethnic mix of a neighborhood near one of their stores might require a more sophisticated, richer, spaghetti sauce to be available. Walmart can't be bogged down with those kind of details. In Walmart, everyone gets Ragu. It's Ragu. That's it. And it's on sale, so don't complain. That's what large news corps are today. Walmart. Mass appeal. We only bring you stories of mass appeal. And we'll be right back after this message from Ragu. News wins the rating game by being negative. I've mentioned this before. Plane lands safely is not a story. For decades, every crusty, cigar-chomping editor has uttered the phrase, "If it bleeds, it leads." The actual information we get today might, at times, be accurate. But today it must be sold to me. The largest audience possible, because that's how the news organization is funded. They take their large audience and go sell it to a realtor or anyone willing to pay for a commercial. None of this is any great discovery or news to anyone, I'm sure. I just don't believe that enough people think about it when they're consuming information. We're an odd society, we read the labels, we count calories, watch our salt intake, shop around for a car or a new appliance. But with the information that's feeding our brains, whatever. It seems with information, we're not very savvy consumers. So a lot of people might say today, well, who cares about all those big news companies? We're all connected now. We can just talk to each other, find out what's going on from each other. True, but a lot of those people on your Twitter and Facebook accounts aren't reliable, don't feel the responsibility of reporting accurate information. And more of them are coming from a highly polarized place, just like you. And the platform itself, well, it too is bought and sold. And the most profitable way to do that is an algorithm that feeds you only the information they think you want to hear. So is anyone out there still waving the banner for truth? Sure, I'd say quite a few, but it's tough sledding. For one, truth takes longer, and so many people don't seem to have or are willing to take the time. Truth is also often less interesting, doesn't make for as good a story. No, I heard this. It's magic beans, and they will take me up to a giant in the sky where I can get golden eggs. Everybody's talking about it. It seems we're only interested in truth when it's stranger than fiction. Fibs are fun. Truth is boring. Yeah, there's still people in the news business that care about the truth. People who still have the spirit of those original reporters and journalists. Let me take a couple of minutes to go through the chronology. Newspapers were a cute idea, at least to begin. The bigger ones sent reporters to the far reaches of the earth. We picture men like Hemingway in the heart of the action, composing their reports, then tapping them out on a typewriter at the nearby encampment, or back at their seedy local hotel room with the one light bulb illuminating the bottle of scotch. Later, dictating their pages back to London, Paris, or New York on a scratchy telephone line. I guess that was the print medium. Hey, thanks Gutenberg for the idea. You were essential, but we moved on. I don't think that radio was really much of a source for news. I guess it was during times of war, but not like the newspapers were. Newspapers had a good run. News was in their name. It defined their function in society. A paper of news. Yeah, radio had news, but it also did a lot of other things. Television really took up the news mantle in the 60s, especially with the assassination of JFK. TV brought us all the pictures right into our homes, and only a few years later, a war in Vietnam that was happening virtually live in our living rooms every night at 6. Network TV competed aggressively for ratings and news credibility, from Cronkite to Huntley Brinkley, up through Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, and so on. The mold was broken in 1980. That summer, CNN went on the air. Cable news network. All news. Nothing but news. 24 hours a day. Is there that much news? Well, no. But we'll just repeat stuff. Ah, got it. And cable? Well, that was hot, wasn't it? Everyone's getting the cable. Gotta get the cable. Call the cable company. Wait for the cable guy. It's worth it for all those cable channels, including now cable news. It took radio but another 10 years before some on the failing AM frequencies decided they could go all news. Some of them went all talk, which initially meant it was a bunch of people talking about the news. Hey, we're going to be talking about the news right up until news time at the top of the hour, at which time we'll come back and talk about that news. First, a word from our sponsor, Ragu. Those news talk stations morphed into the blowhard, opinionated talk shows. Talk culture in general has morphed into podcasts. And even now we still ask, what is radio? Well, it's like newspapers. It's a cumbersome communication device. So back to news. We're getting it through whatever device we choose. But who is gathering it up and delivering it to us? Well, CNN still. They've got bureaus all over the world, which means people. People who are able to report back. And maybe some of those people even have an office. Although more and more, they can just work from home, their new home halfway around the world to which they've been assigned. There's News Corp, but that's Rupert Murdoch, and he's a dick. So I hesitate to even call them news. There's Bloomberg, Reuters, UPI, United Press International. Those are news services. Now, they may have their own website and YouTube channel now, but the original business model was to gather up the stories and sell them to other organizations who were interested in news but couldn't afford to have a reporter in Beirut or wherever. There's the Daily Mail, the New York Times. These are billion-dollar entities. Al Jazeera also has some good, concise reporting. Countries have state-run or national networks that may or may not include a news channel. State-run TV in, say, Russia, China, or Hungary might churn out a different message than, say, a state-run TV in Japan. In Canada, we have the CBC. It is my opinion that their news division is becoming somewhat of a joke. We also have the private CTV, which news-wise is unwatchable. American networks still have news, but a lot of that has been spun off into a separate cable channel or a streaming service. On the main network, they care less and less about news, more about The Masked Singer or some Rob Lowe show, I don't know. Before I wrap up, a glossary of why it's so expensive to be in the news business. Number one, you need reporters. A reporter is just that, able to learn the facts, report back on them. You need journalists. Those are reporters who go much deeper into a story. One of the great ones, Christiane Amanpour, had the best line ever about her job. Not an exact quote, but she said, I don't have to be fair and balanced. I just have to be accurate. I love that. So what else do you need here? All right, you need news anchors. I don't know that they have to be anything more than a decent host. Just put things together, go one reporter to another, and if you don't have a reporter, why don't you just tell me the story yourself in a straightforward, accurate way? I don't want to see your sad or happy face, simply a tone that matches the facts. And keep your opinions to yourself. Here's a postscript to that. One of my pet peeves is a disclaimer from a news anchor, a warning for viewers that the following story may contain images, situations, and language that many may find disturbing. Have you watched the news? The whole thing is disturbing. You make your money on disturbing. Is it your opinion now that the next story will be even more disturbing than the previous 10? You know what's disturbing? You're disturbing. I'm disturbed by your presentation of the news. All right, we got those anchors. We got to put up with those anchors. We got the reporters, the journalists. With all that, you need writers, which means you need editors, and then, of course, producers and directors who control the content and also determine the order and some reasonable presentation. And then, of course, you need a lot of technical people to ensure that it all goes out to your device. Oh, and a big building that is your shop or factory, your headquarters. That requires that they sell a lot of commercials to pay for it all. And Ragu has to sell a lot of sauce to pay for those commercials. So the lesson is, if you want to hear the truth, eat a lot of Ragu.
A long day of childhood calls for America's favorite pasta sauce.
We're also entering into a very dangerous zone. It's a two-tiered information system. CNN was the disruptor of all news services. The internet was the disruptor of all media. Largely, I can get my bits and bytes of information for free. But every once in a while, if I want to get to one of those bigger online sources, I want to go in depth and I trust this source. Uh-oh, a paywall. Only the rich can afford the real truth. You have to pay this much to get better information. It's a commodity. Even some of those free sources are adding a plus. That's a big favorite, a big buzzword now, plus. This Larry podcast is free, but Larry Plus, well. Many are offering a streaming service that comes with an added cost. It's like Walmart having a cover charge just to get in. I have not cut the cord. I still pay a cable bill. Yeah, I know. So even those free services that I get aren't totally free. That's fine. I get that. Commerce. But I don't pay for any extra news services. I used to love the Toronto Star. Ooh, here's a good story. Toronto Star. Oh, paywall. Yeah, I don't love you for $20 extra a month. Sorry. I mean, I can afford the $20. I just can't afford it times 10 for all the other sources I'd like to tap into. I'm also trying to add a new word to this news glossary, coin a new term. I think it's a good one. So I don't want to pay for all these news services, but I want good information. So I continue to tap into all the free and almost free services. I cross-check and double-check the information with other free or near-free sources. I can fact-check things myself, which I often do at little or no cost. And I have a small network of acquaintances I trust, with whom I can discuss the information and its accuracy. Often they can bring added insights. Seems like a lot of work, but A, the truth is worth it, and B, like any pursuit, the more you do it, the more fascinating it becomes. I call myself a musician. Musician. That's my term. A term for someone who cares about accurate information and is willing to put in the time to find it. A musician. You know, the whole reason I've gone through this, try to explain how it works and how we got here, is because I care about accurate information and unbiased news. It means the world to me. I'm a musician. This is a call out to all other musicians. Let's form a band and go out on tour.
Later That Same Life is a weekly podcast series written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. A new episode every Thursday. LarryFedoruk37 at gmail.com.